let's get right down to this. Okay, first things first. Q&As. All right, everybody, if you want to get in on this, like I just said previously, you're going to want to head on over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Taeler Hendrix. You're going to want to hit the subscribe button, go down to the latest Q&A video, hit the thumbs up button again, and what you're going to do is comment your question below in the comment section for your chance to be featured on my YouTube channel and on my podcast. With that said, let's get right down to it. We've got so much going on in my brain today. All right, so someone made a comment about a bikini match. And so I was wondering, like, are they asking if I've ever been in one, whatever. This is from my last Q&A Wednesday video. And so unfortunately, I was in a bathing suit or a bikini battle royal at Ohio Valley Wrestling. I think that's the only time I've done that. I'm not a fan. Don't like it. Obviously, you know, I wasn't, you know, in the time of the divas, so that was like a legit thing. But, you know, I don't think it was really insulting for them to do that because they worked really hard on their bodies and they were really proud of it. We actually talked about this in length and to great detail, I think 2 episodes ago of the brand Live with Vince and Taylor, which is live every Friday. I think not this past episode, but the one before, we actually talked about this exact issue with, you know, women in wrestling and, you know, stop trying to be men that are in wrestling because there's already men in wrestling, like you're a woman. And it's okay to, you know, acknowledge that it is technically easier to be a woman in wrestling than it is to be a man. And, you know, we talked about, you know, all the hate with the Divas title and, you know, the stigma around that and how I don't really agree with that. You know, I don't see why it's like such a big deal to be a diva and the Divas title and the Divas championship and stuff. Like, they are a part of the women's revolution that happened not just in the last 10 years, but in the last like 70 years for wrestling. So yeah, I digress. I have been in one bikini battle royal for Ohio Valley Wrestling. I remember being super insecure about it, and I remember just like being like, wow, I really never ever want to do this ever again. Don't recommend it. Not a fan of it. Okay. Another person asked me, did I know that Curly, the actor known as Curly from Three Stooges, apparently he actually saved approximately 5,000 small animals throughout the course of his life. Holy moly! I did not know that. So thank you for sharing. I think this comes about because every once in a while I'll talk about how I rescue, rehab, adopt, and or rehabilitate and foster animals. I've been blessed enough to work with different dogs, different cats, pigeons, chickens, pigs and piglets. Let me see here. I rescued this lizard and I helped him, and then I also helped this owl named Poppy. I actually think I have like a really short YouTube short video on my YouTube channel somewhere on here that shows Poppy. So thank you so much for sharing that with me. I did not know that, and that is so cool. Another person on my YouTube channel asked me, what was my first ever meet and greet like? I don't know. Like, are you asking before I ever was on television, or are you asking like once I got to television? I felt like my first ever meet and greet once I got into television was a complete bust, and I felt so bad for the person that booked me, and I promised myself that never again would I ever be a bust for anybody that books me at a table at a convention, and to this day I have not been. I always make their money back and then some. Like, I made so much money for Queens of Combat for high spots whenever they would have me at conventions. Like, I know that to be true because they told me to my face. You know, and I've had other people that have really enjoyed, they flat out told me, like, Lucky 13 Promotions has had me at many conventions over the years, and I have never been an issue at all. I always make them money, and I always try to make a good deal for them. Like, I will sign extra 8x10s for them and for other people that book me for conventions after I leave so they can continue to make money off of my appearance and so forth. And I'm always really cool about that. I think, in my opinion, I'll be like, hey, you know, as long as you pay to print these photos out, but I will pick out the photos that I want printed, because it's just people tend to pick awful ones. And I say, you know what, we'll do a 50-50 split, and then, you know, you keep half of the 8x10s that are left over, I'll keep the other half. The ones that you get to keep, I will sign. You can charge however much money you want at whatever other events you want, and boom, you get to keep all of that, you know, and then we negotiate flight, hotel, or whatever is the case. So I always feel like I was really good about that, and I always really enjoy it. I love conventions. I love getting to talk and meet and take photos with my fans. I do not think I'm a very photogenic person. I'm very critical of myself, and so I get very self-conscious. to the point where I'm like, oh man, I really hope that that was a good photo that I wouldn't mind them posting on the internet. Like, because there's been so many instances where I'm like, wah, wah, wah. You know, like, I don't know, like bad gum to tooth ratio, because people used to really make fun of me for that, or bad lighting so then I look haggard, or just bad makeup because I'm not great at makeup, or, you know, just whatever the case may be, bad fashion and makeup choices. Like, I feel so bad about my Hannibal TV interview. I was trying a brand new makeup style that I had seen on a YouTube tutorial with all these products from different tutorials and stuff, and it was just not a good look. And of course, you know, I don't know these things up front. So then I look and I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, everybody watching this interview, I look so terrible. And everybody is so overly critical of me and of, you know, people in the public eye. So I know that that will always be there. Oh, but my fans themselves have always been super awesome. I have only had a few not so great experiences where I'm meeting pro wrestling fans. So I actually really super enjoy conventions and stuff of that nature. Like, I really do, especially later on in my career, because then I kind of had an idea of what actually looked good on me and how I look good. Whereas earlier in my career, I'm like, oh girl, why were you wearing that? Or, oh, why were you trying so hard to be tan, Taylor? Like, just stop. Taylor, why did you stop wearing red lipstick? Like, who cares what people said about you? Like, yeah, I will, in fact, one of these days write a book of notes to my younger self. And I think that there's a lot of lessons that will apply to both men and women. But yeah, overall, I would say more than half of the experiences I had with meet and greets were positive, at least the ones I can remember. Okay. A next question from my YouTube channel. Sorry, it took a really long time, but I love conventions, so that's so much fun to me. The next question, someone asked me, what is my favorite Roald Dahl book? Okay, this guy is legit a legend of childhood. Like, for those of you that don't know, like, Roald Dahl is a savage of children's books. Like, he wrote The Big Friendly Giant, Matilda, The Witches, let me see here, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Like, this guy wrote so many crazy cool stories. He is goals. Like, if I could be him meets R.L. Stine meets Lois Lowry meets like Stephen King and Anne Rice, my career would be made. And I wouldn't be a carbon copy of them, because I would take inspiration from so many different aspects of each one of those people. I think that's what made me successful in the latter part of my career in wrestling, was because I wasn't just a carbon copy of one thing. I took inspiration from a bunch of different many things that applied to a bunch of different, many different kinds of people. And so that's how I would want to be as a writer. For Roald Dahl, I would probably say it's a toss-up between The Witches and Matilda, because I loved both of those growing up. What's really cool about Matilda, you know that scene earlier on in the movie where they were like, why don't you go make one yourself, or whatever, about books? Well, what's really cool is that situation actually happened to my mom, Mama Hendrix, and so she actually wrote her own book as a teenager, because they couldn't like afford like the library memberships, and they didn't have that and all and whatnot. And so I think that that's really cool. Whenever I watch Matilda, that crosses my mind. But man, The Witches, though, is a really good one. I love Angelica Houston. Like, to me, she will always be Morticia. I don't care. I don't care. Don't even come at me. I won't even hear it. Another person on my YouTube channel asked me, would I be interested in writing and drawing some sort of superhero, wrestling comic book? No. No, I wouldn't. I'm sorry. I don't want to be like nasty about it, but no. No, I have zero desire. Yeah, no, I do not want to write any sort of wrestling thing for young kids. I don't, because I just don't think that kids should get into the wrestling business. And I'm saying that, and you can be like jaded or, you know, come at me or whatever, but if you're going to be a fan and come at me, listen, I'm not just a fan. I was a person who had childhood dreams, who was a fan, who then turned it into a career. Like, I actually took literal blood, sweat, and tears and torn tendons and broken bones for this business. So you cannot tell me, you know, so-and-so is a good person, or this is how the business actually works. Like, psst, I was actually in it. I actually know these people. I've done these moves. Like, there is nothing you could tell me that, yeah, no, I have no interest in that. I think that the wrestling business preys on the broken backs of childhood dreams and the suffering souls in the business. It sucks that I think I used this in a promo. I think it said It's built on the backs of suffering souls, sucking the life out of childhood dreams. I think that's almost word for word exactly what I said in a promo. Oh man, that's so good. Not too, well, yeah, you know what? That in that moment I will put myself over. But that's actually how the wrestling business is. It's geared towards children for a reason, but then when you get into it, it's kind of like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. She has all this hope for the Emerald City and the great and powerful Oz, and then she gets there and she realizes he's just an old jerk behind a curtain with a keyboard. That's one of the best analogies I can think of for the wrestling business. And so I don't want to have children thinking that the wrestling business is one way when it's really not, and that could be so hurtful and harmful to them and their future. And I think they deserve so much better than that. Like, y'all truly do deserve so much better than what you settle for as far as the wrestling business and how it works and how it's always been. I think there's other childhood dreams that will be so much more successful, amiable, and to affect real positive change as opposed to pro wrestling, because not enough people want to challenge the status quo to make it better for everyone, not just women, but for everyone, because there are good men in wrestling that do not get their due, because there are bad men that are promoted for doing bad things because the people above them do bad things, and like not only attracts like, but like also protects like, and that's how you have this status quo. And that's not just men, there's women involved in it too. Another person asked me, has Triple H ever inquired about me going to NXT or a tryout? I can't specifically go into any specifics about talks that I have had. But what I can say is that I have had a tryout back in 2015. It was like 2 or 3 weeks after I found out I had restricted lung disease. Like, talk about a mind screw, but I went there and I nailed it. I even did some of the exercises more than once, because Jessica Havoc was a late addition to the tryout that I was on, and she didn't have as much time as the rest of us to prepare. And so there was also not an even amount of girls. So I actually did a couple of the exercises twice so that she would have a partner. And I was like super supportive, yeah, that was a really crazy experience. Really, really crazy experience. So I have been there. I actually got really good reviews from people like Goldust and from people like Scott Armstrong. Every once in a while, you'll see him interact with me on Twitter. And some other people that really, really thought I had I didn't want to say the goods because that sounds bad, but that I would have what it takes. I think Armstrong told me I needed maybe less than a year at NXT before I would be main roster ready. One of the issues was like a certain issue with my footwork. So that was really, really cool to hear feedback like that about my talent, compared to how all kinds of people in the wrestling business talk about me versus people that are actually in the know and backstage in the inner workings of the WWE, giving me such an immensely valuable and positive feedback. That was amazing, you know, because I love cutting promos. I love designing characters. I love helping people with mannerisms and gear and creativity. I wouldn't even care if I had a backstage job, honestly, because I think that I have so much that I could offer as a published author and a very creative person who actually understands the business. But as far as the actual specifics of stuff like NXT and Triple H and stuff, I cannot go into specific details at this time. Another person asked me, what is my favorite WWE belt? I don't know. I honestly do not have an answer for that question. I am so sorry. I would have to say one of the women's belts because I am a woman and I don't have a desire to invade a male space and take one of their belts. Like, I don't see a need for that. But I have always been a huge fan of tag team wrestling. Like, that's what I always wanted. Oof, this one's hard because you got Raw, you got SmackDown, you got NXT, you got tag team titles. Yeah, I do not have an answer for that one. I am so sorry. Oof. Okay. Another person asked me, what is some advice you would have for someone who is on OnlyFans? Ooh, this is a loaded question. Get off now. Like, deactivate, get rid of it. Like, whatever damage is already done, you can't change that, but you can change your trajectory of what is still possible for you going forward. I think OnlyFans is a very short-term thing, and I think it's very dumb. I think that a lot of the women that I see doing OnlyFans are like, we don't need men, look how much money we're making. But like, real talk though, ladies, who's paying for those subscriptions to your OnlyFans? Crickets, crickets. The men that you said you don't need. That's what's so stupid. And they don't see how this is such a short-term thing with long-term, what am I trying to say? You're making short-term business decisions that are going to have long-term consequences, I think is what I would say about that. And this isn't judgmental. This is just the reality of the situation. The world does not care about your feelings. And that's why, you know, like a lot of the stuff that you have going on today, it doesn't matter. Okay. Like you have to live in the actual world that we're in and not some fantasy land, okay? The world does not care about your individual feelings. The world is going to go on with or without you. That's why people say life goes on, okay? And with OnlyFans, it's very similar to a certain thing in wrestling. And I actually did this because other women got me into it, and I should have realized that that wasn't a good thing, but I trusted certain people. And again, there's an accountability aspect to that, so I have to take accountability for it. But that's how the cycle continues. And when you try to educate people on it and say, don't do this, like learn from other people's mistakes, the promise of the money that they're going to make tones you out. So I'm hoping that what I say right now will actually help. Like, stop, get off of it. That money is going to be gone in an instant, but you're still going to be left with the consequences of OnlyFans. Okay. And those are not the consequences you want for your life. There are children killing because their parents were on OnlyFans and they were getting bullied for it in school and stuff. Like, this is real. This is real life. This is the real world we're living in. All right, that money is going to be gone. So say, for example, you've already made $1 million, okay, and you have $1 million in your pocket right now from OnlyFans. Get out, take that money, and do the 80-20 rule. Live off of 20% of that and put the other 80 towards other things, okay? So 20% of $1 million is like $200,000, okay? Of that $200,000, split that in half, okay? Now you have some lifestyle stuff, and then you have some living expenses, okay? The other 80% of that $1 million, start doing things like investing in your education to learn a different skill. Start investing to create an investing portfolio that will actually pay you dividends, meaning you make money while you sleep for the money that you've already made, okay? The more shares you own of something that pays dividends, then the more you make every quarter that they do a payout, whether it's 3%, 3.7, whatever. It's still more than you would make putting in your money in a regular bank account, a savings account, a regular one anyway. And then start looking at other investment opportunities like real estate, okay? Not business real estate, but real estate in the sense of single family homes or apartment buildings or so forth, and just diversify your portfolio. Work on that compound interest, so then you have some freedom to deal with the aftermath of being an OnlyFans person, because it's so short term. It's so short term. There's only so many photos where you can be partially or not clothed at all before people turn around and be like, okay, well, she showed me all there is to see. I'm going to find somebody younger and newer that I haven't seen yet, and then go subscribe to their OnlyFans. And then what are you left with? So just don't do it. But if you, it sounds like this person already started it. If you've already started, just cancel it and get out now. Because even if you tell somebody when you're applying for a job that you don't have social media, they will look for you. It's a real thing. So that's what I would advise. Value yourself more, because we live in a society that thinks that that's empowerment, but I've never heard somebody be like, oh yeah, she took her clothes off, I really want to listen to her. Like, that doesn't exist. It's the opposite. Like, nobody wants to listen to what you have to say. They just want to see how much you're going to take off, you know, or how much you're going to do and reveal. They don't care about the words coming out of your mouth. It's not empowerment. Okay, trends that I hate. Well, that's one of them. Another one would be, I think we talked about this last week, like the fake vegan food that they're pushing on you now, which actually killed lab rats and experiments who ate this fake meat stuff every single day. Like, real vegans wouldn't eat this stuff. Another trend that I hate is, gosh, I feel like earlier today I could have answered this so well. Trends that I hate. Oh yeah. Like the two-party system. I hate that. It's always Democrats versus Republicans. And what people don't understand is we were actually warned about this many, many years before it happened. But there's actually the next question. I can actually probably go into that because somebody asked me an educational question. Another trend I hate would be, Oh yeah, the infringement on free speech, okay? Free speech doesn't mean the only speech allowed is the one that agrees with you. That's not what free speech is. Like, I think free speech is necessary. And I think that you have to even allow the bad free speech. Because once you start exiling people on freedom of speech for, you know, yeah, they say some bad things, right? Like some really, really bad things. But if you take away their ability to say those bad things freely, then you're kind of giving them this kind of underground power that they should never have. You know, with this whole silence the opposition, because the silence will only stay silent for so long before there's an uprising. And that sort of uprising is not the one you want. So, and taking away people's free speech is one of the ways in which you do that. Hate only gets more hate. And that's true for a reason. We saw that in the 80s and the 90s with a certain group going against another group based on the basis of skin color. And, you know, this woman literally, I think it was like the late 80s, early 90s, mob mentality took over. People lost all logic and reason, and they started beating this guy. Now, his ideals I do not agree with at all. Never have, never will. Sorry, cannot convince me. But this woman, she was on the opposite side, and she was a woman of color, and she saw what was going on and realized that nobody on either side was listening to reason anymore. The mob mentality completely took over, right? And she saw this and she was like, this is going to have so many unintended consequences. This is so bad. So what did she do? She did something that you actually saw a lot about 20 to 30 years earlier in history during the bus rides, the freedom rides, okay? Where people literally that were getting beat up by other people, someone who was not getting beat up would then shield them with their own body so that they could give the person that was getting beat up a break from the abuse, right? She basically kind of did the same thing. She covered this guy's body because the mob mentality was just beating him to, I don't want to say a bloody pulp, but yeah. And for me, that's so indicative of free speech, because she actually saw, like, I don't have to agree with this person, but beating him up, what's that going to do? It's only going to continue more hate. If this guy dies today, what is his kids? His kids are now going to grow up without, and they're going to grow up with hate in their hearts, right? And some time had passed, and she actually ran into that guy's kid. And the boy was like, thank you. And thanked that woman for what she did. And that boy didn't have hate in his heart. There's so much. Again, guys, those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. That's all I gotta say. Okay, someone asked me, what are some things we're taught that are actually wrong? This is also a loaded question. Man, I gotta do a whole video on just trends I hate and then just actually write notes down, because I'm kind of spitballing all of these answers on the fly like I always do. And I know there's so many trends that I hate. I think we should do like a Peter Griffin grinds my gears segment. I really do. We could make a weekly segment of that. But anyway, what are some things that we're taught that are actually wrong? Okay, as a teacher and as somebody who's done a lot of research, I am a very big fan and a very big advocate of critical thinking and thinking for yourself, independent thinking. Here's what I can say. Back to something I said earlier about the two-party system. Whether you guys realize it or not, a lot of the farewell addresses of former presidents were very prophetic. And one such instance was George Washington. George Washington, in his farewell address, actually warned America of what would happen to our country if we let our political system dissolve into a two-party system. Because prior to that, there were many different parties, not just the Democrat and the Republicans. Okay, and we're seeing this now. A lot of other political parties don't even get a shot at, you know, potentially winning. You got the Independent Party, the Socialist Party, the Green Party, the Tea Party, like all of these different parties, right? But the only people that ever get a real shot at being president these days, and have been for decades, are the Democrats and the Republicans. And it's such a, even though there's so many things that are bipartisan issues, we see it's just, well, group identity. If you don't fit the exact formula of this or the exact formula of this, you're hated by both. It's just, that is toxic. That's not toxic masculinity, like, which is a trend I hate. Like, stop calling men toxic. Anyway, the two-party system, George Washington warned what would happen, and we're seeing the effects of it today after several generations of a two-party system. We need to get to the point where more ideas can be heard and taken seriously and have money put into those so they can run on the same legitimate platforms that Democrats and Republicans do. But most lobbyists and everybody else who pretty much corrupt our political system here in this country only put their money into stuff that they think can win, which is Democrat and Republicans. And that's where we have these huge issues today, because there's a lot of things that are issues that shouldn't be issues, and then the real issues aren't getting solved because one party doesn't want to bend over to the other party, one party doesn't want to get on their knees to the other party, so forth and so on, when they forget that the reason why they were elected is to represent the governed. So it's a huge mess. Another thing that we're taught that's wrong is there's actual historical evidence that Christopher Columbus was not the first to come to the New World or America. Now, you obviously know that there were indigenous tribes here before Christopher Columbus, but what a lot of people don't actually know, teach, or talk about is there were actually foreign people who actually came here and had dealings with indigenous Native American tribes way before Columbus, which is very, very interesting in my opinion. One such group of people were the Vikings. The Norse, the Vikings, they actually, there's actual evidence that suggests that they actually touched down in Canada and in America, predating by a couple hundred years Christopher Columbus. And there was actual, I was watching the show and I actually did some research and looked it up because I was like, no way, this can't be right. And it was actually true. Not far from where I grew up in Massachusetts, there were these cave drawings that were actually detailing a tribe's war, in a sense, their battle with people that they had never seen before. And it was pretty much describing Vikings. Now, what's also very, very interesting, I don't remember if it was Sweden. I think it was Sweden. Sweden actually had this nautical empire during like trade routes and all kinds of other stuff that actually was even better and predated some of the actual stuff from the Vikings. So we're actually not taught about any of that stuff. So those are some things that I would definitely say are not taught and really, really should, because it gives a lot of different types of perspective. I think why people still just talk about Christopher Columbus discovering the New World is because he was one of the first to actually put documentation that did a lot of, that survived, basically. It's one of the reasons why there's more than one copy of our Constitution and so forth, is to ensure its survival. All right, everyone, that's the latest Q&A with Taeler Hendrix. We're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we've got things I think in theory that you should know about